The fluorescent lights hummed softly in the server room of Crawford Tech as CEO Ethan Crawford made his way through the maze of machines. At 35, with sharp features and an impeccably tailored Navy suit, Ethan had built this cybersecurity empire from nothing over the past decade. Tonight, however, he wasn't here as the commanding executive his employees knew. He was conducting an unannounced late-night inspection, something he did periodically to understand what really happened in his company when management wasn't watching. The sleek San Francisco headquarters stood quiet at midnight. Only the skeleton crew of night shift engineers remained in the building. Ethan had entered through a side entrance using his master key card and was making his rounds when he noticed something unusual. A faint blue light flickered beneath the door of server room B, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of fingers tapping on a keyboard. Ethan approached quietly, his Italian leather shoes barely whispering against the polished concrete floor. As he drew closer, the typing grew more intense, purposeful. He hesitated before pressing his palm against the cold metal door. His first instinct as CEO was to assume someone was either stealing data or conducting some unauthorized activity on company property. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open. What he discovered sent a wave of confusion through him. A young Latino man in his early 20s sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by monitors displaying complex code. Jason Rivera, according to his employee badge, wore the standard Crawford Tech IT uniform, but looked exhausted, with dark circles under his focused eyes. "What are you doing with our servers at midnight?" Ethan asked, his voice steady but firm. Jason jumped to his feet, nearly knocking over a monitor. "Sir, I can explain," he stammered, panic flooding his face. "This isn't what it looks like." Ethan glanced at the code on the screen, recognizing elements of an advanced intrusion detection system. But what caught his attention wasn't just the code, it was the makeshift living space tucked behind the server, racks of sleeping bag, backpack, and textbooks stacked neatly beside a small battery-powered lamp. The scene painted a story more complex than the simple security violation. The air grew thick with tension as Jason stood frozen, awaiting judgment. Ethan's mind raced through company policies, security protocols, and potential risks. Yet something about the young man's frightened eyes triggered memories Ethan had carefully buried beneath years of success and achievement, memories of another young man desperate for shelter and opportunity. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we're not looking for them. This chance encounter between a homeless tech genius and a CEO with a hidden past would transform not just two lives, but an entire industry's approach to inclusion and second chances. The decisions made in this server room would ripple through Silicon Valley, challenging fundamental assumptions about talent, opportunity, and the true meaning of security. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Heart Stories for more content that reminds us how compassion can rewrite endings no one expected. Ethan's gaze moved methodically across the makeshift living space hidden among the humming servers. A military-grade sleeping bag lay unzipped against the wall, surrounded by neatly arranged possessions, a Stanford backpack, textbooks on advanced cryptography, and a framed award for ethical hacking. Each item told a story of discipline amid desperation. The room's cold blue light cast shadows across Jason's face, highlighting the exhaustion etched into his features. "Show me what you're working on," Ethan said, gesturing toward the screens instead of addressing the obvious living situation. Something in his voice made Jason hesitate, then comply. "It's a neural network-based intrusion detection system," Jason explained, fingers trembling slightly as he navigated through layers of elegant code. "It identifies attack patterns that conventional systems miss by analyzing behavioral anomalies rather than signature matches." Ethan leaned closer, professional curiosity momentarily overriding his concerns about company policy violations. The architecture was brilliant, innovative in ways that surpassed what Crawford Tech's senior security team had developed. The algorithm's precision reflected a sophisticated understanding of both offensive and defensive cybersecurity tactics. As Jason demonstrated the system's capabilities, Ethan recognized elements that would revolutionize their flagship product. "Where did you learn to code like this?" Ethan asked, eyes still fixed on the screen where nested functions executed with remarkable efficiency. Jason's shoulders relaxed slightly. Mostly self-taught, started when I was 12. After my uncle gave me an old laptop, he paused, then added quietly, Stanford's cybersecurity program filled the gaps in the formal theory, but the practical skills came from necessity. Their conversation was interrupted when Jason's stomach growled loudly. He looked away, embarrassment coloring his face. The sound punctuated the reality of his situation more effectively than words could have. How long have you been living here, Jason? The young man's expression hardened. 3 weeks. My roommate left without notice, and I couldn't cover the full rent plus tuition. His voice carried no self-pity, just resignation. I'm in my final semester at Stanford. Just need to graduate. Then I can afford proper housing. Then came the revelation that was changed everything. Jason minimized his project and pulled up a security log, navigating through timestamps and event markers with practiced precision. 3 weeks ago, I noticed unusual network traffic patterns during my night shift. Someone was attempting a sophisticated breach of Crawford's client database. He pointed to timestamps and IP addresses, highlighting attack vectors that formed a pattern. Your security team missed it. I wrote a patch and deployed it before any data was compromised. Why didn't you report it? Ethan asked, stunned by both the averted crisis and the silent intervention. Jason's eyes finally met his. Because I was afraid they'd ask how I found it, why I was here at 3 a.m. running analytics that weren't part of my job description. I couldn't risk losing this job. He gestured to the sleeping bag. This isn't ideal, but it's temporary. Stanford degree opens doors if I can just finish. In that moment, Ethan saw beyond the policy violation to something rare, extraordinary talent paired with quiet determination. Here was someone who chose homelessness over abandoning his education, who protected a company that might fire him if they discovered his circumstances. The server room's constant hum seemed to grow louder in the silence that followed, as both men recognized the crossroads before them. The true measure of potential isn't found in perfect conditions, but in what someone creates when everything is stacked against them. This truth resonated in the space between them, challenging assumptions about privilege, opportunity, and the unwritten rules that govern success. Jason, Ethan said after a long pause. My name is Ethan Crawford. I'm the CEO of this company. The color drained from Jason's face as he instinctively stepped backward, bumping against the server rack. His eyes darted toward the door, calculating escape routes that didn't exist. The rhythmic blinking of server lights cast alternating shadows across his features, highlighting the naked fear in his expression. Please sit down, Ethan continued, gesturing to a nearby chair. I'm not here to fire you. I'd like to understand your situation better. Silence hung between them for several heartbeats before Jason slowly lowered himself onto the chair, perched on its edge like someone prepared to flee. Ethan didn't sit. Instead, he leaned against the wall, loosened his tie, and began to speak in a tone rarely heard in corporate boardrooms. 15 years ago, I was sleeping in a rusted Honda Civic in Detroit after my parents discovered I was gay. The words came out matter-of-factly, without drama. They gave me 20 minutes to pack. My father said he'd rather have no son than one who brought shame to the family name. My mother watched silently from the kitchen doorway, hands trembling, but mouth firmly closed. Jason's posture shifted slightly, surprise replacing fear in his eyes as the power dynamic between them began to transform. I work night security at a small software company, Ethan continued, his gaze focused on middle distance as if watching scenes from his past unfold. Taught myself to code using their computers after hours and the public library during the day, showered at the YMCA, ate ramen heated in gas station microwaves, applied for scholarships with the library's address because I couldn't list parking lot behind Walmart as of my residence. Ethan described his journey, the scholarships he eventually won, the tiny apartment he shared with 4 other students, the first security algorithm he sold for enough money to start his company. With each detail, the invisible wall between CEO and employee dissolved a little more, replaced by recognition of shared struggle despite their different paths. "Your code is brilliant," Ethan said finally, "and your dedication to finishing your education despite everything, that's something I recognize. It's something I respect." The following morning, Ethan called an emergency meeting with his executive team. The sleek conference room with its panoramic views of San Francisco felt worlds away from the server room where a young man had made his temporary home. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the tension around the polished mahogany table. "Absolutely not," Victoria Harrington, the CFO, said firmly after Ethan outlined his proposal to help Jason. Her tailored charcoal suit and perfect platinum bob projected authority as she tapped manicured nails against the table. "This creates unacceptable liability. What if he has stolen company data? What if other employees demand similar treatment? What if shareholders interpret this as misuse of company resources?" "He saved our client database from a breach our team missed," Ethan countered, leaning forward slightly. "That alone is worth investing in his potential." "And the optics," Victoria pressed, narrowing her eyes. "It could look like favoritism toward LGBT employees. The press would have a field day. CEO helps gay programmer for personal reasons." "It's not favoritism to recognize talent and determination," Ethan replied, his voice hardening. "It's good business. Some of our best innovations have come from people who think differently because they've lived differently." The debate continued for hours, revealing deeper fault lines in the company's culture. Two board members questioned whether helping one employee might damage shareholder value. The head of HR worried about precedent and the potential flood of hardship cases. The general counsel outlined potential legal exposures with meticulous detail. Only when Ethan asked, "What company do we want to be?" did the mood shift. The one that discards talent because it doesn't arrive in perfect packaging, or the one that recognizes potential in unexpected places? The question hung in the air, challenging not just corporate policy but identity. Sometimes leadership isn't about following established protocols, but knowing when to create new ones. As the meeting concluded with tentative approval for a limited support program, Ethan recognized this moment would define Crawford Tech's culture more profoundly than any mission statement ever could. The corporate apartment felt impossibly luxurious to Jason, a furnished one-bedroom with clean towels, a stocked refrigerator, and most importantly, stability. Sunlight streamed through real windows, not server room vents. The shower ran hot for more than 3 minutes. The bed didn't need to be hidden at dawn. Ethan had arranged everything: housing through graduation, tuition assistance for his final semester, and a formal internship that accommodated his class schedule. The keys felt unnaturally heavy in Jason's palm, weighted with unexpected opportunity. "This isn't charity," Ethan had emphasized during their meeting in his office, the San Francisco skyline stretching behind him. "It's investment in talent. Crawford Tech expects returns in the form of your contributions to our security architecture and your commitment to your education." Their weekly mentoring sessions began awkwardly. Jason, still uncomfortable with his sudden change in fortune, spoke little during their first meeting in Ethan's glass-walled office. He sat stiffly in an ergonomic chair that probably cost more than his entire wardrobe, eyes darting between the expensive artwork and the floor. Ethan, accustomed to commanding boardrooms but inexperienced in mentorship, struggled to bridge the gap between their experiences despite their shared background. "Tell me about the attack vector you identified," Ethan finally said, steering toward familiar, technical territory. Jason's eyes lit up as he described the sophisticated breach attempt, his hands animating complex concepts with newfound confidence. The technical language created a bridge between them, establishing common ground where personal connection had failed. From that foundation, a genuine relationship grew. Jason absorbed Ethan's lessons on corporate strategy and team leadership like parched earth drinking rain. He took notes during discussions about managing technical teams, asking insightful questions about balancing innovation with business constraints. Ethan found himself learning too, not just cutting-edge security techniques, but something about authentic connection he'd sacrificed during his climb to success. Jason's perspective on vulnerability, in systems often paralleled human vulnerability in ways that challenged Ethan's thinking. Your experience gives you perspective our Ivy League recruits lack, Ethan told Jason during their fourth meeting, over coffee in the company cafeteria rather than the formal office. You see vulnerabilities they miss because you've lived with vulnerability. That insight makes our products stronger. Then came the blog post that threatened everything. Exclusive tech CEO harbors homeless employee in corporate servers, blared the headline on TechCrunch. Someone had leaked the story, complete with photos of Jason's makeshift server room accommodations. The article questioned Crawford Tech's security practices, suggested special treatment for select employees, and hinted at potential regulatory violations. Comment sections across tech websites exploded with debates about privilege, security protocols, and corporate responsibility. Ethan's phone exploded with calls from investors and board members. Major clients demanded security audits. Victoria Harrington forwarded a particularly scathing email from the company's largest enterprise customer, with the subject line, "Immediate concerns about data protection protocols." "We need to issue a denial and distance ourselves," Victoria insisted during an emergency meeting, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Frame it as an unauthorized situation that's been addressed. Possibly terminate." "No." Ethan's response cut through the room. "We're not denying the truth or abandoning Jason. That's not who we are, and it's not who I am." Instead, Ethan made a decision that shocked his PR team: complete transparency. He personally wrote a statement acknowledging the situation, explaining the circumstances, and announcing the creation of a housing assistance program for employees facing temporary hardship. He arranged a joint interview with Jason for the technology section of the New York Times, focusing on systemic barriers to diversity in tech. When a CNBC reporter asked point-blank if helping Jason was related to their shared LGBT background, Ethan replied, "This isn't about sexuality. It's about recognizing that talent doesn't always arrive via traditional paths. The tech industry loses brilliant minds every day because we've designed systems that work only for those with safety nets. We can't claim to value innovation while ignoring innovative thinkers who don't fit our narrow expectations." The media storm intensified before it began to shift. Industry leaders weighed in, some criticizing Crawford Tech's security practices, others praising its humanitarian response. Employees sent private messages of support. A senior developer revealed he had once lived in his car while working at Google. A product manager shared her story of couch surfing through her first year at Microsoft. Sometimes the bravest response to criticism isn't to hide the truth, but to transform it into a platform for necessary change. As headlines gradually evolved from scandal to social impact, Ethan recognized that the crisis had created an unexpected opportunity to address issues the industry had long ignored. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of media attention, corporate restructuring, and personal transformation. Jason graduated with highest honors, his master's thesis on advanced intrusion detection systems already being implemented across Crawford Tech's security infrastructure. The day he received his diploma, Ethan sat quietly in the audience, watching with quiet pride as the young man who once lived among servers now stood tall in academic regalia, shaking hands with the university president as camera flashes captured the moment. The Crawford Opportunity Foundation launched with $20 million in initial funding a comprehensive program providing housing, mentorship, and educational support for LGBTQ+ students in technology. The announcement generated headlines across business and technology publications, creating ripples throughout Silicon Valley. Jason, now hired as the foundation's executive director, alongside his role as junior security architect, brought first-hand understanding to its mission that no amount of corporate experience could replicate. "We're not just solving homelessness," Jason explained at the foundation's launch event, his confidence now matching his technical brilliance. "We're addressing the systematic barriers that prevent talented individuals from marginalized backgrounds from reaching their potential in tech. Every time we lose a promising mind to housing insecurity or family rejection, we lose innovations that could transform our industry." The Safe Code program transformed Crawford Tech's approach to recruitment and retention. The server room where Jason had once made his temporary home became the Innovation Lab, a 24/7 workspace where employees facing housing insecurity could find resources, rest, and support without shame. Private sleeping pods, shower facilities, and meal services operated discreetly alongside cutting-edge technical equipment. What began as one company's response to crisis evolved into a model studied by human resource departments across the industry. The most profound moment came unexpectedly. 6 months after that fateful midnight discovery, Jason invited Ethan to a small cafe in Oakland. Waiting there were Jason's parents, who had refused contact since he came out 3 years earlier. The emotional reunion filled with tears, apologies, and tentative steps toward healing reminded Ethan why this work mattered beyond business metrics and press coverage. His own parents had never reached out, making Jason's reconciliation both bittersweet and hopeful. Within a year, 5 major Silicon Valley companies had adopted similar programs. When Crawford Tech received the Most Inclusive Technology Workplace Award, Ethan and Jason accepted it together. Their journey from that server room now industry legend. The photograph of them holding the award, the young Latino programmer, and the seasoned CEO standing as equals became symbolic of a shifting culture. The true innovation wasn't technological, Ethan said during his acceptance speech. It was recognizing that human potential often hides in places we've been trained not to look. Security isn't just about protecting systems, it's about creating environments where everyone can contribute their talents without fear. As Jason took the microphone, he scanned the audience, filled with executives and engineers. The person sitting next to you might be one crisis away from homelessness, or one opportunity away from changing your company forever. Which will you provide? The cycle continued when Jason began mentoring Sophia Chen, a brilliant transgender programmer facing similar challenges to those he had overcome. From one act of recognition, a ripple effect of transformation spread throughout an industry previously known more for disruption than compassion. What would you do if you discovered someone's struggle hiding in plain sight? Would you see only the policy violation or the human potential beneath it? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to Heart Stories for more narratives that remind us how one moment of authentic connection can transform not just lives, but entire industries.